Glasses, and then of course, topper.
Stop. How was that?
Stop. Here come old flat top to come, grooving up slowly. Welcome to the show.
We got a call to actually try to do a fundraiser for something here in town. It's going to be a one-nighter that we were going to do. And wouldn't it be nice if we did something that hit a lot of the demographics? So, well, let's do Beatles stuff. That'd be good. We started to work on that and worked over months, and we took it very, very seriously. We'd never been that serious because normally we improvise a lot and sort of go different, but we got very, very making sure every little part was correct.
We knew from the beginning that we were going to spare our audience us dressing up like the Beatles or trying to pretend to be the Beatles. And so we weren't going to do that with the wigs and the whole thing. We're trying to find people who were sort of, of a certain vintage that really would really get it, because talent is one thing, but talent and experience and deep knowledge is when it all comes together. Bit by bit, we started to put this thing together and combine our strengths, and that first night was magical. It was a very special night. We loved it. They loved it. We made some money for a good cause. Everybody was happy. We still thought it would just be a one-night stand, but it started to take on a life of its own.
Next thing you know, it's like a week later, we're getting people coming up to us on the street saying, "Man, that was great. You should do this again." People were writing letters to the editor in the newspaper. We were getting letters in the mail saying, "That was amazing. You guys should do this again," and all this stuff. And this went on and on and on. We'd never, like in our lives, we had never had that much response to something. Then we decided, hey man, that's pretty good. Pretty good response. Why don't we do it again? Steve Smith, drums and vocals.
When I was a boy, the most popular band in Belleville, without question, was the Sands of Time. They were a wonderful pop band, wonderful, and they played all the hits on the radio, and they played them just like the record, and they sang wonderfully, and they were energetic and fun to watch, and I was a big fan, and Smitty was the drummer in that band. I just thought he was a rock and roll star.
I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show when I was 12, and I was taking piano lessons at that time. I was doing Royal Conservatory. I was doing my grade 10 piano and doing all Bach and Beethoven and all that kind of stuff. And when I saw that, I thought, hey, that's what I want to do. That's really cool. So I had to deal with my dad. He said, well, you finish your Royal Conservatory stuff, and we'll see about, getting you a drum kit or something for Christmas.
He's a great drummer, great vocalist, total nutcase. Love the guy. There's something about him. I don't know what it is, but he makes me laugh, and he just makes me smile all the time. And he's a great guy.
Cracker, he got beat down below his knee. Only in his armchair you can feel his disease come together right now.
Paul Lockyer, who had been playing with the R&B boys at the time, showed up, and he ended up being in the band. And he's a great R&B player. Give him the Hammond B3 sound and the piano. I mean, that's his deal, and he does a fabulous job, and great vocalist. So excited that he's in the band for sure.
I come from a very musical family, Salvation Army brass on my father's side, going back, many generations, and on my mother's side, more piano and choral work. And so inevitably there were the piano lessons. My mom was a teacher, and they'd go to Florida, for the March break, and so the boys would come over, right? And we'd get the drums, and Wayne would have his sax, and rhythm and blues is what we were playing, as opposed to pop music, as opposed to Beatles music.
He's certainly got a real resume behind him, and he's a wonderful guy. And again, there's that sort of kinship, and everybody kind of knew everybody, and he was just the perfect guy to step in.
We were looking for someone to play the second guitar stuff that we do. I didn't know Al very well, but he came in, killer voice. I mean, he has got the R&B voice, fabulous. Great guitar player, and I feel really honored to share the stage and swap out the odd solo with Al.
The whole music thing started for me when I was entertaining my parents and my uncles when I was 4 with my cousin's guitar, kind of lip syncing to Elvis and all that stuff, right? That's, I guess I was a little hooked on music at the time, but the Beatles really inspired me to want to play for real.
Al's got a beautiful voice, and also is a great player, and so he just seemed to be the perfect fit.
I've been a musician all my life, played in many bands over the years, always in a part-time situation, never really went on the road or did any of that, and I had no idea what was going to come, what was on the way, It's just been unbelievable.
Vitas is one of the inspirations that we all got into a band, because he looked older than he was. So here we'd be in grade 8, and he'd be playing guitar in his brother's band. They'd be playing bars and all that stuff. He's like in bloody grade 8.
See, Andy and I had a little band together, grade 5, grade 6, with a couple go-go dancers. And then in grade 7 is when we moved to St. Michael's over here, and that's where Andy met Mark, and he got more involved in the English rock, The Who, where I was more R&B stuff. I started out on guitar at 10 or 11 years old, and then switched over to bass, because I just wasn't a great lead guitar player, and if you could only play rhythm, you couldn't cut it. So I had an opportunity to start playing bass in the band.
Vitas is, without question, maybe the best musician I've ever played with. Everybody's great in their own way. Mark is an incredible guitar player. I can't imagine ever being in a project and not having Mark there, playing his guitar. But Vitas is he never makes a mistake. he made a mistake once, and it was like, it was like, what? Vitas made a mistake. That's impossible.
Everybody says, "Oh, he never makes a mistake." Oh, I've caught him making some mistakes, but it's pretty rare. Vitas is just he's just so laid back, and he's so solid. Like, as far as, musicianship, he's probably the most solid guy.
I quit school when I was 16 years old and playing in a band with Smitty. Never went back to school after that.
We've been together longer than most people have been married, and we're still together.
I know you, and you know me. One thing I can tell you is you've got to be free. Come together right now. Go, yeah.
The secret weapon. I think if you ask any of us, is sort of the term that's used. We've always used that when it comes to Wayne. We would show up and Wayne would take over the soundboard. And next thing you go, no, you have the secret weapon, puts the secret sauce on the board and gets things happening. So he's been there by our side. That doesn't matter what the heck is going on stage and how crazy things get. When you stand out front, things work and they sound good, and he makes sure things sound the way they're supposed to be.
Well, it started when I was about 11 years old and found myself one afternoon with a saxophone in my hand, and my cousin who was playing at the time said, "No, you can't play this, it's too difficult." And I just grabbed it and went into another room and kept blowing on it, and I was in grade 10 and the Beatles came to the world. And they didn't have a sax player, so I couldn't be a sax player anymore. I had to be a guitar player. And actually there was a girl that I was interested in that thought I looked a little bit like Paul McCartney. So that was it. That was over. So I bought a guitar at Sears with a little amplifier and tried to learn how to play guitar. I didn't play guitar that well, so I became a sax player.
We've always sort of jokingly called ourselves like the Beatles on steroids, and because we play a larger sound than some acts that pay tribute to the Beatles, and Wayne is a big part of that because we do what we do from the stage, but then he brings it to life through the sound.
So it's a nice combination of folks. As when you put us all in the room, it works.
Come together.
Well, the Beatles and Ed Sullivan, that was the deal. That was the change. That was the change in life.
We were just getting ready for bed, really, and because school was the next day, and Mom and Dad called us downstairs to watch this event. I don't think I'd ever seen the Ed Sullivan Show before because of the time it came on. So to watch it, and to see this guy for the first time, this guy with a long stone face, right here on our stage.
So there was the black and white TV. 1 inch in front of that black and white TV was my sister, who would have been, I was 8, just about 9. My sister would have been 16 or 17, with her face pushed against the TV set. Halfway up the room was Dave and myself sitting there watching Ed Sullivan, because it was always cool. Might see some plate spinners or something. So that was happening. And then in behind was my mother and father in the lazy boy chairs. So show goes on, it's all right. And then they introduce the Beatles, and next thing you know, my sister is screaming at the TV set. My father behind me has got their goddamn haircut. I mean, just yelling at the TV set. And I'm in the middle, like going back and forth, right? Looking and saying, there's something going on here, and I want to be a part of that.
It was just madness, but a beautiful madness. And the girls were screaming, and they would shake their hair, and you just got caught up in it. We really didn't know what this was going to be about. I had just turned 9. Now, the average Beatle fan was probably about 13, 14, 15. But the only thing we knew about England was the Queen lived in England, and Knights of the Round Table, castles. That's all we knew about England. And so for these 4 young fellas to come to North America and to be on the television set in your living room, which felt very personal, it was like they landed from outer space. And next thing you know, the world has changed forever. It was like watching an explosion of wonderfulness, in front of me. So I picked up on what the Beatles were laying down. Oh, I didn't understand it. I didn't know what guitar chords they were playing. I didn't know any of that. But I was picking up on this joyous sound, the way they sang, the way their voices blended. There was something about it, and it was just amazing.
In that day and age of no social media and not seeing everybody's new style every 1 second that goes by, it was always such an experience that 6 months later, what was the look going to be? What were the sounds they were going to have?
Just before the Beatles hit, in North America that is, it was kind of a dark period. Of course, there had been the JFK assassination in November of '63, and there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of darkness and sadness that veiled certainly North America and probably the world to a larger extent. And when the Beatles showed up on the Ed Sullivan Show on that night, February the 9th, 1964, 8 o'clock, Channel 10, it was like somebody had pulled back a dark curtain on the world, and the sun just shone through. Everyone got caught up in it. Those who loved it, those who couldn't understand it, and those who were just kind of chronicling the whole event. And it really was something that will never happen again. I remember the very next day trying to find, my mom had a kind of a fur hat that she had, and I remember putting that fur hat on and trying to pretend I had long hair, because I had a crew cut, and trying to pretend I had long hair. I remember walking around the streets, talking in what I thought was a Liverpool accent, and thinking I was ultra cool, kind of goofy, but it was just amazing.
They hit the obviously the music, they hit the social issues, they hit the and of course the fashion. I mean, they hit all of the different levels, and it was a very exciting thing to be in the middle of.
They could wear the cool clothes, and the boys who had the Beagle boots, with the sharp toes and the Cuban heels, and they put little clickers on the bottoms of their heels. And so at church, or anywhere where they're in school, anywhere where there was tile, click, 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 as they'd walk down the hallway, and they'd change their haircut literally overnight from slicking it back like Elvis, kind of a thing, to brushing it down, And the girls were absolutely Twitter-pated, of course, they would sneak their transistor radios into school and try to listen to a Beatles song in the middle of class, and then the teacher would take it away, and all that kind of stuff. So it was a marvelous, marvelous time. It literally changed. It changed the world in a lot of ways, and it changed the world musically. It changed the world socially.
That first night, and seeing just the whole deal, the playing the guitars, the girls screaming, it was just such a cool thing. And I so wanted to play guitar. I wanted to be in the Beatles. I wanted to be George Harrison.
I thought being in a band was cooler than being the captain of the football team. Well, I think it was December of '66 I got my very first guitar. As luck would have it, met a friend at school who also had a guitar, and, it was like, I've connected with somebody on a different level now, somebody else who gets it, and he's got a guitar. And his name was Tom Ward. Then we found another one of our school friends who had a set of drums, and that was John Paul. And so we thought we should have a band. But we got together once. It didn't really quite work. There was something that wasn't quite working. There was something missing. And John Paul said to us one day, there's a guy in my class. He's got a Beatle haircut, and he's got an electric guitar, and maybe we should get together with him and see what happens. John Paul, myself, and Mark have been playing music together ever since that eventful get-together in the 7th grade in 1968.
We would set up, sometimes in the summertime, we would set up on the back porch, and we would play. And some of our friends who would be around, some of our grade 7 and 8 buddies, they would be there. They would go out the backyard where we were set up, and they would go across the street. And that's how we did our sound check. They would go out there, and then they would come running back, and they would say, "Sounds great across the street."
We rented the hall, made up our own posters, put them around town, and had our own dance and charged admission, and whatever we made from it, we made from it. Our parents were sort of taking the money at the door and chaperoning.
We just had a great time. It was a big deal for us. And I remember, I think at the end of the day, we had $75 to split, after all of our expenses, $75 to split up. Wow. I mean, when you are in grade 8, that's a big deal. We didn't really have much of a social life around school, because every weekend we were out playing. And I'm talking from grade 9 on, we would do Friday and Saturday.
Other people our age, they'd work at a gas station or deliver pizzas or something, and we decided the music route, and if we could make a couple of bucks here and there, that's our pump and gas money sort of thing.
It just got bigger and bigger and bigger as far as our whole circle through high school. Every Friday we would have to, we got special dispensation from Sister Mary Teresa to let us out, because we would have to leave at noon to drive somewhere to go play a gig that night on the Fridays.
When we first started, I mean, none of us had driver's license. We had to find somebody to drive us to wherever we were going, up to Peterborough or wherever, to play a high school dance, and hook on a U-Haul trailer and fill it with gear, and away we go.
We recorded a song called Samaritan, which was probably 12 minutes long, with probably a 7-minute wah-wah guitar solo from a guy that couldn't put 3 notes together. But put the wah-wah on it, look out. The next day, we got on the train, because nobody could drive. We were all kids. We were all 14 years old or so. We all get on the train at Union Station, get the dimes out, go to the rotary phone, and we start phoning. I start phoning the record labels. You go to the yellow pages, record companies. "Oh, hi, we've just recorded some stuff, and we'd like to come and see you." And people let us in the door. I mean, this was the crazy part. Mel Shaw, who was right in the top of the charts with the Stampeders at the time, and he was the head guy at Quality Records. We phone him up. Well, he must be the guy to talk to. He took our bloody call. And we end up down in the boardroom at this, again, at Quality Records. We got the reel-to-reel tapes, because that was before even cassettes or anything else. Puts it in this big boardroom, big speakers, all this stuff. And he ends up putting it on the big reel-to-reel, and he plays the thing through. The whole thing, from start to finish. When you think of today, like, we would not have even gotten an appointment, obviously. We probably would have got arrested.
We had a booking agent who saw promise in us when we were like in the 10th grade, and took us on and started to book us gigs, here, there, and wherever. And his name was Bernie Dobbin. And when high school finished, it was decision time. What are we going to do? Are we going to go to school? Are we going to go to college or university? We're going to try to get a real job, and all of that stuff seemed quite daunting to us, and we just thought, no, let's be rock and roll stars.
When we actually took that leap to say this is our job in 1974 through to 84, and we were out playing, we were playing our 200 to 250 nights a year.
We knew the work was there. It was just a matter of devoting ourselves to it.
We started to really build our base as a band in the colleges, universities, Montreal and Ottawa and Toronto and different spots. And that was very exciting for us because they were on what we felt were on the leading edge of what the next movement was going to be. So people say, did you go to university? And Andy and I can say very clearly, and all the guys, is the fact that we have probably played every university in the country. We might not know where the biology lab is, but we know where the pub is in every university, and we know the names of those pubs too.
We were a team. We were a gang, and we were experiencing all of this at the same time. It was just us, and nobody will be able to really understand what that's like to get on the inside unless you've been there too with your gang.
In the absolute craziest of conditions, of traveling for 18, 20 hours to Thunder Bay in the middle of January, we would be laughing, we would be telling jokes, we'd be telling stories. It was just crazy times. But the bond that it had, I mean, we became brothers. This was not 4 people or 5 people that just happened to show up to play a gig. I mean, we were all brothers.
That support of friendship kept us a little bit safe because there's, we could have gone down some dark paths. You're on the road, you're in nightclubs, and you're surrounded by less than desirable situations.
We were all good friends. We went through the good times, the bad times together.
They're your brethren. They're your brothers in arms. I tell you, they are just, and they still are.
Some radio with the Wolfman, and we go rock and roll, baby. It's about time.
Wolfman Jack was huge. A few years earlier, he had been in the movie American Graffiti. He had one of, if not the most popular syndicated rock and roll shows on radio in North America. He was a celebrity, an absolute celebrity, and considered to be a powerful man in the business in the respect that, if Wolfman Jack liked you, you're on your way. There was a show that Chum was sponsoring along with Molson's. This was a van show. It was called Vantastic, and it was a custom van show with the shag rugs and the psychedelic paintings and all the neon lights and the black lights and all this stuff, and it was bars and all these things. And anyhow, they had booked for the event Wolfman Jack to be the star of the show on opening night.
So then we show up that day. Place is packed. It's fabulous. We're there. We're playing our songs. Everybody's, getting into it pretty good. So Wolfman Jack comes on to play the one song with us. And he says, "Yeah, we're playing Stagger Leave." Yeah, okay, fine. So I had to give him the chord. And I gave him the wrong chord. So I do the chord. He says, "Great." So we start the song, and he starts singing it like right off the top in a totally wrong key. It is the most horrendous thing, besides the fact he can't sing anyways, but rest his soul. But he couldn't sing. It was awful. And he was just, relief. So we go through the whole song. It ends, the crowd going crazy.
He finishes, ta-da, huge, thunderous applause. And then he announces he's going to be signing autographs off to the side of the stage. But the band will keep on playing. So we keep on playing. Of course, everybody mass exodus over to the side, and we're playing to nobody. Well, a bunch of vans, custom vans that we're playing to.
I think maybe our roadie was still out front. I think maybe he even might have got in line to get an autograph because he didn't want to even watch us anymore.
What we wanted to do was we wanted to give him our brand new record that had just come out. That was Westminster Abbey. We wanted to give it to him. And so we got a package of 45s right from the pressing plant, and we were going to give it to him. We also wanted to get our picture taken with him for our promo kit, and we thought that'd be just fantastic. We said, "Wolfman, here's our new record." And he said something like, "So this is your new platter, boys." And he said the word platter. It was like, oh yeah, this is rock and roll. We give him this box of 45s. It's about 25 in there, I don't know. but we're keeping an eye on them because we're playing to nobody, but we don't want to miss them. We want to get this picture taken. We're just finishing up a tune, and a kid comes up to me, like, I don't know, it's like 10, and he goes, "Hey, would you autograph this record?" And I'm looking down at him. I'm going, "What record is that?" And it's our record.
We thought, was our manager there handing out records? You know, all that stuff. Where'd you get that? Oh, Wolfman's handing them out. That son of a gun just used them to hand out to people.
We hit the last chord of the song, and he's now finished, and we scoot over to get a picture taken. And we literally are this close to getting the picture snapped with our arms around him. He's in the middle, you know. And just before the photographer snaps it, his manager, who was a little guy, a tough little guy like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas or something, tough little guy, he goes, "Pictures backstage in 5. Pictures backstage in 5. We wait 5 minutes and we go backstage, and he's long gone.
He'd gone out to his limo and was long gone, and we didn't even get a picture.
Ow! Wolfman.
At the time of my life, across the Atlantic Ocean, now I'm alone, feeling alone.
So in 1978, we were really floundering as an act. We've gone from 76, we had our one record out with Quality Records, and at that point we didn't hit the big time, so we were back. We were playing all the different things, and we were just floundering on what to play. It was not a happy time.
Seeing Bruce Springsteen for the very first time in 1978 at the Rochester War Memorial, and we got the chance to go because our friend got us passes to go and see the show, and so we all witnessed that at the same time. It was very exciting because at that time we were a little bit unsure what we wanted to do with the band, and there was even talk that we would maybe enough was enough, you know.
So we get 2 cars, drive down to Rochester. The show starts. We're like 12th Row Dead Center at the War Memorial. The whole E Street Band was just so powerful, so amazing, so much energy. And it just went bang, 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 and through all these songs. I didn't know any of the songs. I'm watching this guy on stage, this Bruce guy, and he's like playing a whole solo with one note, and he's getting more passion out of that one note than I've ever gotten out of my whole guitar my whole life with just this one. And it was like, what the heck is going on here? What's going on? It was like a mental shift of just watching this whole thing happen in front of us.
It was like a religious experience. We were energized and realized the love of rock and roll, and yes, we're going to continue on. And he was our inspiration to do that.
If that moment hadn't happened, I think we probably would have sort of faded out.
We got energized from seeing Springsteen, and by 1979 we were rocking. I mean, we were playing a lot, and we were absolutely confident that we would get signed to a record label. We knew it. We could feel it. I've never been that confident before or since.
That was like one of my, probably the favorite time of our band for that 3 or 4 year period. Our show took on a whole new life of its own at that point. The energy, the excitement, the adrenaline, every night. We had to put it out there, and that is solely directed to that night in August of 1978.
We started to develop a very focused presentation for the band. It was lean, mean machine, and we eventually started getting, wasn't too long after that, we started getting attention from record companies, and it wouldn't be too long before we would sign our record contract.
Our big break from a record company point of view came from Tom Cochrane. We were playing the Wiki Whack Club in Shediac, New Brunswick. But we go in, we watched the band, they were great, and it was Red Rider, which later became Tom Cochrane and Red Rider. Talking to them in the intermissions, and they were saying, talking about how they were just recording their first album.
You tended to be a tight-knit community with entertainers, especially guys that were coming from here, from Ontario, going out there. So when we played Shediac, resort town, not very far from Moncton, on the ocean. Our band house was unbelievable. It was all like plastic garbage bags in the windows because the windows had all been smashed, and a toilet that was backing up and stuff. They're all keen and wide-eyed, you know, what's it going to be like? And I said, well, it could get a little rough, but it was fun because the gigs were actually a lot of fun.
We talked and talked, and we just seemed to hit it off, and went to the band house, and stayed up all night playing guitars, drinking beer, and I was brave enough to pull out a cassette because we had just finished doing a demo, and so he had a small little tape recorder, like those little square ones that you'd see in grade school. He listened to the whole thing. There's about 12 tracks on it, and we sat there, and he went, man, I love it. I love this. He said, is that you? Is that you? I love this. I love this. And so he said, you know, when he gets back to Toronto, he's going to tell the fellas at Capitol Records all about us.
We just struck up a friendship. You know, we talked about everything Beatles, and we talked about guitars and vintage guitars, and it was just a friendship that you know was like that. You know what Mark's like. So Andy's, you know, more the outgoing one, but Mark's always smiling, always there, and they're just really friendly guys. And we hit it out with them. We talked music, and might have sat down and played a couple of things together, and so the friendship kind of went on.
A few weeks later, we're back in Toronto playing the Nickelodeon. Halfway through our first set, I see all these people coming in the back of the club, and I swore I saw Tom in the middle of it, but I didn't know. And I leaned over to Andy and I said, I think Tom just came in.
Brought out all the guys from Capitol Records, and it was basically an on-the-spot audition.
So Tom came in with Dean Cameron from the Capitol Records. So we end up meeting with him after our set. So it wasn't that long after that we were in Sounds Interchange in Toronto.
It was pretty exciting to record the album, you know, on Capitol Records. I mean, Capitol Records in North America, Beatles were on Capitol Records.
But then it gets even cooler than that, because when they put out the record, Capitol came to us and said, we want to launch Parlophone in Canada. We realized very quickly that Parlophone was the Beatles label in the UK. And we became their band that launched this label again back in Canada. It doesn't get any cooler than that for us.
We thought, holy Jesus, this could be the start of something really big.
The engineer for our project was Daniel Lanois. He was brilliant.
And we spent 6 weeks there finishing off the album. Wonderful guy and talent, crazy talent.
Just doing the finishing touches to the album. That's where we found out about John Lennon being taken away from us.
Howard Cosell, Monday Night Football. Yes, folks, the most famous of the Beatles. Probably the most famous of the Beatles, dead at 40 of gunshot wounds. Then it went to commercial. I mean, I freaked out. The only reason we were all in the room was the Beatles. And that the only reason we got interested in music and all this stuff, and has tied it all the way through from when we were kids up to this point. This all happening as we're doing this whole thing, and then finding out about John Lennon. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, we were all in tears.
It was a very difficult night, without question. Everything just got shut down. And there we were, and we just looked at each other and we, not John. It can't be John. No, this is too much.
Nobody said a word all the way home, and it was just dead silence, with the exception of the dead silence of talking. But the radio was on, and every song was a Beatles song or a Lennon song or whatever. And talk about a moment that we all shared.
I wanna take you out dancing.
The single, The Last Dance, had been released, and John Lennon's song Woman had been released Chum, big radio station in Toronto, played Woman. And, it's a beautiful song. Just as the song ended, Jin, 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 it went into The Last Dance, which is our song.
When the last dance comes, I wanna know for sure how you feel inside without me.
It was one of those things that just, again, knocks you over and you go, life's pretty cool in a weird way. It's very, very cool.
Then you start to soak it up and realize that's us. It's not just a song. It's our journey. We did this.
And we were doing little better clubs and a little better this and that, and traveling quite a bit and doing showcase gigs in New York City, and it was a lot of excitement, a lot of travel.
In 1981, we did an extensive tour throughout the province of Ontario with the Monks. We did major shows with April Wine. It was a great time. It really was. I mean, there were hard times, but I guess as you grow older, you don't really dwell, or you care not to dwell on the bad times, the tough times, and you remember the wonderful experiences and the fun times and the laughs and the thrills of doing this with your friends.
Cause that little girl I knew so well, now when I'm looking so hard to tell, is that the little girl that I used to know? She's romantic, you know I can't resist her. I knew it when I kissed her, I'd never be the same. She's romantic, always climatic. She's waiting for the right time. She knows the game, she knows the game.
There was talk about the next album and about this is great, we're loving some of this stuff, and started talking producers, and maybe we could, you never know, maybe we could record this in England. And of course we were going, what? You gotta be kidding me. There was a recession going on, and what we were told was that we were the stroke of an accountant's pen.
We had some success. We had certain songs that got played a lot, coast to coast. We broke into a couple of top tens, and it was pretty neat, but it just didn't happen for us, after that album. We left it all on the stage. We felt we did everything we could do. It's like playing in the minors your whole life, but for one season getting called up to the bigs, and it's kind of, and then you go back. but it was a wonderful experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
She's alone. She's alone. She's romantic.
Now, I was the first one to get married. So I got married in 74 to beautiful Barbara. And it was especially difficult, or it was more of a commitment to do the road when you're married.
I'll never forget coming back from an East Coast run that was probably 7 or 8 weeks. And that would have been probably in the summer of '83. And I have, at that point, a little 2-year-old, Kristen, and a little 0-year-old, Megan. We came back, and we were so excited to get back probably a day early. We drove all night from the East Coast. And I never forget pulling up in front of the house and Kristen coming out and seeing me, and was all sort of excited to see me, and then took a good look at me, and then just started crying and ran away. And that was a moment for me. That was a moment I went and I said, I can't be on the road as much as I am right now. I gotta bring that back home.
It's hard. It's hard, you know, and you're away, and it's tough. And then, of course, when the children come along, and then I miss. I miss the birth of Ben and Hillary. I can't have that back. When the band decided that we'd given it everything we could, and we left it all on the stage, we sort of splintered off into different worlds. I was petrified. All I knew how to do was sing in a rock and roll band. That's all I knew. I'd never really had a job.
My resume was very clear. It said, I played in a rock and roll band. That's what it was.
You're used to living this bohemian lifestyle, you know, where you're up late and you're performing and smoking nightclubs, and now all of a sudden you're home and you wake up and you have your morning coffee, and my children were little, and you're getting the kids ready for the day, and all of those types of things, you know. So it's different. Rafi came to town at Centennial Secondary School. I was there. I took the little ones, and it was pretty cool. And here's this fella sitting on a stool with his fuzzy slippers and his guitar, and you know, Mr. Sun, Mr. Golden Sun, and the place erupted. It was wonderful, and I just thought, oh, I think this would be just a great thing to explore. And I'd already been singing some of those songs with the guitar to the kids, because it was something to do to keep the children amused, and myself. In the back of my mind, I thought, yes, this is something I could envision myself doing. But I still had this rock and roll reputation. It's funny, it's completely flipped now. There's a lot of people today who still think of me as a children's entertainer, and they don't know about my rock and roll background. The most important thing I've ever done with my music is my musical therapy for those that are struggling with cognitive impairments. And there's a certain time frame in all of our lives where music is very important. And so songs that they dance to in their teenage years, and you know, and they'll sing along and they'll dance, and it's really quite beautiful, and it's an incredible thing to be a part of. Mark was always the businessman in the band. Thank God he was the only guy who could add and subtract and wanted to do it, you know. Musicians, I know it's a stereotype, many of us tend to be the artistic dreamers, and actual hard nuts and bolts stuff of business is not necessarily our first go-to. And but Mark was always very good at that.
Well, he's certainly got a drive. I mean, when he puts his mind to something, you know, if it can be done, then he'll find a way to do it. And he was like that on the road. Like, you know, he looked after the finances. You know, if at the end of the gig he would go get paid, and he would divvy the money up from there, and make sure, you know, he was the accountant sort of thing in the band.
I looked after the business part of the band. So dealing with booking agents, managers, dealing with the clubs, the theater owners, all this stuff. I had sort of both sides that I was doing, and dealing with the other musicians in the band. When I was on the road, I read books on how I was going to invest my millions that I made in music into real estate. And I would read these books, and I would say, wow, you know, I can buy investment properties, and I can do this, and I can do that. And I kept really reading these things, and it really intrigued me about the whole deal. I am very thankful that my education came in the way it came, and the on the road, learning as you go along.
Jojo was a man who thought he was a loner, but he knew he couldn't last. Jojo left his home in Tucson, Arizona, for some California grass.
when we were on the road and we were playing in some of the worst shitholes, I mean, we played some good spots, we played some bad spots too. And I remember Mark saying, wouldn't it be cool if you had your own place? And everything was perfect. Everything was just the way you wanted it to be.
In 2001, Ken Harden phones me up and then informed me about the fact that Jerry Bongard was going to be potentially selling the Stephen license in downtown Bella, which was the old McCarthy Theatre. So I started to do some research on this, on the potential of it, looking up theater restorations that had happened over throughout the States and in Europe. And it became very exciting to me.
There were naysayers out there. Oh, you can't do this. This will never work. This will never fly. But he was determined, and it was just an amazing thing to watch come to life.
Mark, being a musician, having been on the road and kind of knowing how he always wanted to be treated, has made sure that when a musician, a group of people come into the theater, that they're treated with respect and given certain luxuries. People leave here and they think it's the greatest place they've ever been in, and they tell people.
The people he has brought to this town, I can't believe it.
There's been so many incredible moments that have happened in here. Randy Backwins, who's been a dear friend of the theater, and he doesn't need to be playing here, but he comes here, and he comes here not only to do shows, but he's also come here to do some rehearsals where he likes the building.
I love when these little towns, when there's somebody to preserve the old theaters that have been here since the 20s, which are acoustically perfect because before they had big amplification. When I heard he was redoing it well, and putting in facilities so bands could record video and audio, and he's a musician himself, so he knows what musicians want. He's really a great promoter, and I think I've played here more than any other artist.
It's always great coming down to Belleville and playing the Empire Theater and going, reminiscing with Mark and going through his guitar collection and his amps and stuff. So it's they're the kind of guys that when you have this camaraderie in the music business, they these kind of friendships mean a lot to you.
He took his good fortunes from his hard work and put it right back into his hometown.
I have been honored to be able to spend time at the Empire Theater with my buddies. It is a house of friends, house of people that they've taken ownership in it. It's really incredible to see the family that's organized this place.
Started to take on a life of its own. And then in 2002, when Gary Jacob from Abbey Road on the River found out about us.
And I got a call from Gary, and he says, do you guys sound as good live as you do on your website? I said, I'm going to be running a Beatles festival starting next year in Cleveland, and you guys sound great online, but I want to make sure that it's not just fake, and you really do sound that good. I said, well, that's us. What you hear on the website is us. So, and he was going to do this, and it was going to be sponsored by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it was Cleveland. It was pretty cool.
The next thing you know, we're doing this festival on its maiden voyage in Cleveland.
Well, we think it's the largest Beatles-inspired music festival on the planet. And it started in 2002 in Cleveland, Ohio. And we moved it to Louisville in 2005, where we've now been for 12 years. And we got 60 bands, 250 concerts, 5 days. It's been about 20 to 25,000 every year come. There's always a big crowd.
The people, the fans that come here are diehards, and they come year after year for 15 years. It's like a family reunion, tempered with great Beatles music and some other fun music of the era. And the bands have our own little fraternity, and we enjoy each other's company. So I look forward to it more than any other thing every year.
When we went down there in 2002, we were scared shitless because we're like, who the hell are we? Like, we're down here and there's all these great bands and clone bands, and the Tim Pipers, who's he's like John Lennon reincarnated. I mean, it's just amazing. So we were pretty scared, when we did that first thing. But we did a good job on it, and I think part of the reason was because we had so much, adrenaline going that we just said, "What the hell? We got nothing to lose. Let's just do it."
We were probably the only band that was not a lookalike band. Everybody else had the outfits and costumes and all that stuff. And then there was us. And we would come on stage, and Andy would unfurl the Canadian flag at the front of the stage every night, before every show. And we would just crank it up and play our tunes. And we were the oddball. We were the crazy Canucks. We had a wonderful time.
All the other bands would just get whoever the house engineers were. And so then I show up as an official sound man for that particular group. And knowing that this particular band, All You Need Is Love, I know the guys, I know how they play, I've played with them, and they like to play with an edge and with a real attitude. I had complete control of the sound, so I kind of bumped it up a little bit, and it just blew everybody away because it was such a force of sound that they kind of hadn't heard before.
They are in the DNA of Abbey Road on the River. They started the event with us back in '02, and they were the only non-lookalike band that year. We didn't know what direction we were going to go in, and then when we saw what they could do with music, and I might add that 15 years later, they've transformed themselves into a much better band.
They're our friends, our brothers. We've toured with them all over the country. They continue consistently to just bring it every single time, and they get better. They're aging like fine wine, men. And so I don't know, they're just kind of like celebrities, especially in this world we live in this Beatles world. They are the celebrities.
All You Need Is Love really started to grow around the same time that Abbey Road on the River started to grow. And we have a special relationship with that festival that we're intertwined because we grew and matured and became a full-blown touring band as that festival grew to become the premier Beatles-influenced music festival in North America.
I watched the crowd, and they know every word, they know every little spot, so it's like you better do it at least as close as you can, because these people are going to hold you accountable because they know it better than you do.
Watching those individuals take delight in rediscovering something that was important to them many years ago. So whether it's the Beatles or the Who or any of the classic rock tunes that we do, you're watching people. It's like their memories are being triggered. It's very much a communal experience that's quite unlike any other performance experience that I've ever had.
With our band, it's like okay, we're getting into the ring now. This isn't the sparring match anymore. This is the real thing, and it's always kind of like it's a, leave it all on the stage. This is it. This is our time to shine.
They've set the standard for all the other bands in this festival. Everybody else wants to be that good.
From my perspective, I have the best seat in the house. And really, the whole phenomena that is Andy Forgy working an audience. The guy is such a consummate performer.
He's a killer singer, killer frontman. We go from great to excellent as soon as Andy takes the front of the stage, and he can command an audience like nobody else. And that's pretty special.
Yeah, we can go up there and play, and there's lots of bands that get up there and play, and they sound great, but they don't have an Andy, and people just love him. That's just amazing. He does it time and time again. I'm going, oh man, like, how does he do that?
Andy is the bomb. I think that if it wasn't for Andy, we'd just be another band playing music, Beatle music, But I think Andy's the key. Andy's the show. Andy makes it happen, and Andy's probably one of the most genuine people I've ever met.
When you're on stage with Andy, you don't have to worry about anything. The bigger the crowd, the more he enjoys it.
One thing about Andy Forgy is he can't give you 80%. It's always 110%. And oftentimes we've done a show before the big show, and he can't help himself. He just sings so convictedly. He's so personally excited about it himself, like it's infectious.
Way down inside, woman, you need.
A couple of months before the Abbey Road in the River, Gary Jacobs phones me and says, "Hey, would you be up for, if Prudence Farrow is going to be there, and she's the one that the song Dear Prudence was written for by John. Says she's going to be there this year. Do you think would it be okay if when you're doing the White Album, she maybe came in and stood on the stage or whatever, or maybe Andy could sing the song to her or something like this.
I'm really glad that I didn't know that this was going to happen too much in advance, because I would have been so nervous, and I would have been overthinking and over-preparing. I know I would have been. I wouldn't get any sleep. I would have been a mess.
You have the White Album, which is very near and dear to our heart. You have Dear Prudence. That is my favorite Beatles song. I absolutely love that song. And we start playing, and Prudence walks up on stage, and Andy's singing to her, and I'm looking over, and I lost it. I got tears. I just got all welled up.
Singing to an audience is one thing, but singing to a person, literally a foot away from you, or whatever the case might be, looking in that person's eyes and singing to them is a little, I don't know what to say. It's certainly close. It's very close.
We're doing this song, and she's right there, and Andy is like killing it, and in the way only Andy can, with with all the emotion and singing it to her. Oh man, that was a moment.
She was totally at ease with it, and really appreciative, and was, without question, the single highlight, number one highlight of our Abbey Road on the River performances. It was just an absolutely perfect moment. When we were younger, we fantasized about these opportunities to play in some of these cities and countries, and we're doing it now, and we're being treated wonderfully, and we had the chance to work with top-notch crews and technicians, and it's really like, we hung in there long enough, guys, and now we're going to get some of the good stuff.
And here we are, this many years later, and we have done Abbey Road on the River shows in Cleveland, in Louisville, in Pennsylvania, in Washington, and we have been all over the place doing that. And it's also expanded into more things where we've been all over the States, and I mean, it's been crazy, that it's worked out this way. And then and of course, let us not forget Liverpool, where we've gone to the birth of the Beatles, and the Cavern Club, the International Beatle Festival over there.
Liverpool, I mean, that's the place. That's the Mecca. That's where you have to go. And if you're a Beatle guy, and to go there and to have the opportunity to perform in the Cavern Club and to feel the vibe of that city.
I'm in the dressing room and I'm looking around at and all these autographs and all these pictures, and like every band that I've ever been, inspired by has played this place. And it's like, wow, I'm playing in the same bloody place. It was just that was a really cool experience.
It was like I was walking around in a dream, and all these really great folk who meant so much to me are all there, and it's all because of the Beatles. And John Lennon's sister Julia Baird was there, and she saw us perform and came up and said, "John would have loved your band." Just it doesn't get any better than that.
I mean, we've traveled to places that we never ever would have gotten to, in any other band that I was ever in. I mean, I was a small town band really growing up, and we played maybe across Canada and that, but we never ventured outside of that. We played a lot of places that never ever would have gotten to.
Still small town boys, and this is a big deal for us. I mean, it's neat. It's neat to be able to do this, and we don't do it a lot. So when we do it, it's really special. It's like we've won a prize, and you're off to Hollywood.
It feels like the big time. You get treated like the big time.
Whoever would have thought in Miss Durkin's class in grade 7 when we did our first gig in the basement of St. Michael's Church that this many years later we'd be getting on a plane and flying to wherever to go and play in front of a whole bunch of people, and it being very cool.
This is our youth being relived, except that we're wiser, I hope, and that we've seen things, you know, from our experiences, and we know what potholes to dodge and things of that nature, and really know what's really important. Check egos at the door, all of those types of things, and yet we all have those wonderful stories that we can share of watching each other's bands over the years.
It's just been the most wonderful group of people you could ever want to hang with and be with. You know, I consider them all my closest friends, you know.
If I can come back to what my father had said, you know, music does and will continue to open doors. And so it's a wonderful thing to have had the opportunity to take advantage of those early piano lessons, right?
It's something you don't take for granted, I can tell you. It's something you go, wow, we are lucky to be doing what we're doing.
We're all in our 60s now, and being able to play gigs like that, you know, like high-profile gigs, it's just great. It just makes you feel young again, you know, like you can't beat that.
That just blows my mind that this Beatle band's been together for 17 years. Are you kidding me? This thing's just started out as just a one-shot deal.
This all goes back to February 1964. Music's been a wonderful thing to us. We've all made our choices. We've all made our decisions on how we do things in life, and music has been a huge, huge part of where I am today, that's for sure.
I do love music. I love it. It is really who I am. It will be the last thing, you know, for me. It's always been about a song, a melody. There are lots of people who love music, and you know, they have a wonderful record collection. They love to have the radio on, but for me, it's always taken me to places, and it's like cinematic. You know, it's something that envelops me.
People showed up.
Air conditioned. Air conditioned.
What do you mean? It's because of us.
And not until I sing, and I'm not going to sing it until Mark's got his electric on and he gives me the nod. What about the boy? But that's not going to happen until Mark gives me the nod that he's ready.
And just so you know, in this band, the nod means the fucking nod. Okay?
Wait for the fucking nod.
Wait for the fucking nod all the time.
Don't get the nod, don't get
And just so you know, Vetus is never wrong except there.
Yeah.
It was because the cameras are rolling. He is never wrong. He is our go-to guy. Whenever we're not sure about anything, he's the go-to guy until now.
Where'd you get that shirt?
What? Winners.
Yeah, losers.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a wonderful time playing for you in Louisville, Kentucky. Good night. Raspberry.
We got a show for you, and I hope it's tonight.
Well, we all can't be wearing a girls' marching band jacket.
Absolutely.
Jeez.
See this jacket? This belonged to my 16-year-old niece. Unfortunately, I can't do it up. It just sort of hangs there, and it's a little bindy. But
Yeah. Well, the diet wouldn't hurt.
Just wait for the fucking nod.
Andy Forgy, children's entertainer.
What's that?
I want to go through this list just.
Okay.